Even in a miniature world, people need a place to live. When we build our layouts, especially shelf layouts where space can be at a premium, it can be easy to focus only on the industries that we need and leave out other important real-world elements like restaurants, stores, and living space. Let's take care of that for the Grunge. Hi everybody, I'm Joe Parker. This channel is the Pixel Depot. This is the latest installment in a series about building a small layout called the Grunge. In this episode, we're going to focus on building a tenement house. Unlike most of the projects on this layout, this one is a straight-ahead, out-of-the-box build, but that doesn't mean it didn't come with its own set of challenges. I started with Walther's Parkview Terrace Tenement Kit, although on the Grunge it might be more appropriate to call it Rundown Alley View Terrace. Either way, this kit, along with Laida's Joint, form the boundary between the residential side of this neighborhood and its industrial side. It also provides a nice entry point from staging. Now we've got a lot of ground to cover today, so let's get moving. Let's check out what comes with this kit. Just a reminder that this channel covers model railroading, including planning, hints, tips, how-tos, and updates. To stay up to date, click on the subscribe button. Also, click on the bell so you'll be notified when there's new content available. You can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Those links are in the description below this video. So the kit's molded in, it says 4 colors, although I'm guessing they consider clear to be a color. Nope, I'm wrong. There is black. So there are indeed 4 colors. We've got a green section, a black section, brick colored bits, the concrete colored bits, and there's the window material as well. I built this kit before a number of years ago when I was with the Model Train Club. I did a kit bashing on it at that point in time. So the first step here is going to be to wash all the parts and let them dry. When it came to color selection for this building, I wanted something a little different. As you saw, the kit walls come molded in a dark red brick color. Now, in this very small area of the layout that I've been working on, there are already 2 structures there. There's Laida's Joint and American Can. Laida's Joint is painted really close to the color of the walls that came with this kit. The American Can building I painted a tan color. Years ago at a convention, I saw Art Fahey of Bar Mills suggest using orange for your brick color. Yes, plain, bright orange. Now it sounds crazy, but it does replicate the older orange brick color you find on some buildings. And once you weather it, it looks pretty good. So that's what I chose for this structure. I also decided to use a medium brown color for the windows and other details, and I thought that would complement the orange pretty well. But this meant I needed to paint just about every piece in the box. So I painted the brick pieces first. I didn't go for a heavy coat as I wanted to have some color variations and I wanted some of that red background color to show through. So I did a number of light dust coats until I was satisfied with the look. I gave the windows and details a coat of nutmeg. Since this was a satin finish paint, I also followed that up with some dull coat later on the pieces that represent the stairs and wood decks. I gave the roof a coat of chalky dark gray, and with that, I was ready for the next step. All right, as you can see, I've done the first sprue of the windows and doors over here, removing the paint from around the edges. I use solvent cement to glue these windows in, and that means that it needs to have a paint-free surface to make sure that it melts the plastic on the window side and as well as the building side. So I need to remove those. I'm doing that before it gets too dry. This is dry to the touch, obviously, but it's not set. It usually takes hours to fully set, so it's pretty easy to take it off. I am using just a regular wide X-Acto knife blade. You can use this one. This is the chisel blade. I find that it doesn't lay flat as well as the angled one. I also find that it's easier to do this if these are off the sprue. So I'm going to remove them all as I did with those, and then we will start to scrape. I'm using my trusty sprue cutters that I got from Micromark. I actually have a number of these on the bench in various places, just so that I've always got some at hand. I find these to be very useful because they sit flush, as you can see here, and they don't leave very much flash at all. Usually you don't have to do any cleanup for these, since it's going to be, you know, behind that surface is going to be behind the wall anyway. I won't do any cleanup. You can use the heavier duty ones like this, and I do use these for very thick sprues. So the way that I do this is very simple. Just take the blade, scrape along the side. I'm putting pressure sort of on the tip end so that it will you know, not take off too much of the material, but will give a nice clean surface, and that will leave plenty of space. As you can see, plenty of green showing now. That will give me plenty of gluing surface, and the adhesion should be pretty good on these. That step is all done. It is a little messy, but didn't take very long, maybe 10-15 minutes tops to do all of those. It means I can use my solvent cement. I don't have to use CA. So those are done. We will now move on to the next step. While most of the area of the walls represent brick, there's a portion at the bottom that is supposed to be concrete. That's the foundation of the building. So after giving the walls a day to dry, I masked them off. I used paper to cover the top area, but I didn't tape that part. More on that later. I hit the foundation area with a coat of Krylon Pebble. This was also a satin finish paint, so once again I followed that up with a layer of dull coat. Alright, back at the bench now after doing all that painting. Now it is time to unmask the pieces. Hopefully I didn't get overspray anywhere. A little bit in the very small crevices there, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. If it poses a problem, a little touch-up will go a long way. A couple of these I did get some overspray up there. Should be able to take care of that with a quick blast of the orange paint. See, there's a few of these where not taping the paper at the top caused a problem. Alright, back again. So I did go back to the spray booth and put a little bit more orange to cover up the overspray. There's still a little bit on this piece here, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. I will be weathering this building with the India ink wash with black India ink and alcohol mix that I do. So that's going to tone things down as it rolls down anyway. And I think it's going to help out with some of these foundation pieces as well. The other thing that I did over at the booth was the color that I used here for the final coat on the foundation. I also put on this foundation piece. I did mask it off here so that the areas that I need to glue would stay paint free. So we'll be gluing the structure to that. So I think I now have pretty much everything that I need in order to at least construct the shell of the building. Per the instructions, they want you to put in the windows first, and I am going to do that mostly because when I assemble these, I want to be able to understand how much space I have for the bracing that I'm going to put in. I will most likely use the 1x1 Lego blocks that I've talked about in previous videos to do that, and this way that will make sure that I have that room and not cause problems if they are slightly too large with putting the windows in. For the small windows and for the big ones, I'm going to use the solvent cement that I am fond of using for this particular process, and that should go fairly quickly. I'm actually going to do all of these all at once so that I can get them taken care of quickly. So we'll put these all in first and then follow up with putting the glue on. those are all in, and while it may not be obvious, these all do have a right and wrong way to go in. Most of the windows and doors have an arch on them. Even these small windows have one side that has a larger flange than the other. And I just noticed that this one has some paint stuck to it still. So clean that one off. But it has that flange on the bottom and top, and the larger flange needs to go on the top. So just like I did with the insertion of the windows into the particular slots, I will now glue them all in. Alright, so that should finish those off. Occasionally some won't stick quite as well as others, so it's possible I'll have to go back and re-cement some in if they fall out. I didn't do the bottom pieces here yet, and that's because I wanted to do one more step before I put those in, and that step is this. When I painted the foundation, you can tell along here that there's paint along the bottom, and what that means is when I attempt to glue these to the foundation piece, the paint is going to prevent the solvent cement from doing its job. So in order to take care of that, I am going to sand the bottoms of these and remove the paint. It should be a fairly simple task. The reason I did this before putting those windows in is I didn't want to have to worry about those popping out in case they overstepped the boundaries there. There's also some paint on the side here that I'm going to take off. One last thing I got to worry about. That happened on a couple of places actually, so I'll take care of that at the same time. Yeah, like I said, one of those didn't quite stick. I'll have to reapply that in a moment. Just lost my windows. That was a bad idea. Okay, now that my search and rescue process is over, I can glue in the remaining windows. Like I said, these have a right way and a wrong way that they go in, so I'm just making sure that I put them back in the appropriate way. Per the instructions, the next step is to put in the window glass. I talked earlier about using the fine sprue cutters for most of my work. However, these are very, very thick where they connect. So I'm going to be using the more heavy-duty sprue cutters here. So though getting in there for that angle is kind of a pain. So let's see if I can't just, yeah, this will work. No one's going to see the edge of that glass anyway, so I won't worry about it. The only place it might be an issue is with the really small windows, but even then I think I can orient the rough edge so that it is away from the bottom. So, alright, so now the next step is to attach these. I'm going to use what used to be called Future. It's now called Pledge with some additive. I'll put the image back up there. I talked about this in the previous video where I was building the structure for, well, the other structure for the Grunge, the American can. I'm going to use the same thing here. This is just floor polish, essentially. The nice thing about it is you put the coating on there and it will adhere once it dries. So when I was planning this video, I thought, oh, well, I'll put the windows in later. And just before I started doing this filling session, I thought, well, why was I going to wait and do that? And I couldn't come up with a reason for it. And then I just remembered what that reason is. So when I was doing the American can structure, and when I went to weather using the India ink and alcohol washes that I like to use, it reacted with the Future, reacted with the floor polish. and left a noticeable area of buildup, I guess is the best way to put it. And so I want to avoid that here. So I am actually going to build the structure first and then put the windows in. So these will all just get pushed off to the side here for a while. We'll assemble the structure itself and then come back and do the windows. And since this is a background structure, the back is open. I plan to put some foam core in there so that it's not quite so obvious, but it's not going to be a complete box as you'd normally get with a structure, so it should be easy to access these areas here. So I'm going to start with this corner here, and the way that this attaches is like this. And so first thing we're going to do is glue those pieces together. My plan, see if it works or not. So this piece here, to make sure that that's butted up there correctly. Go in with our cement. Don't know if you heard that, I just said we'll go in with our cement. I'll do that up at the top here as well. Let that set just a little bit. I want to make sure we get in that corner up here so that it has a good solid bond up there at the top. Should be able to take at least a quick look here. Yeah, it's not looking too bad. Put a bead along the whole run. And then put this back so that it stays square. We'll let that set for a minute. While we're waiting for that to set, I'm going to put these other pieces on top here. All right, so 36 goes on this side. So it sits in there like this, and will sit flush. So this piece is going to sit in here like this, and cement that in as well. Just reinforce that gap there. And we'll drop a little cement in here as well. So while we wait for that to set up, my intention here is going to be to use these 1 by 1 by 1 Lego pieces and put that in the corner. However, there's this bead that runs along through here that gives it, the wall a place to butt up on and gives it some support, and that won't sit flush because of that. So what I do on that in that case is just sand down one of these corners, and it's actually easier to do with coarse sandpaper. So just like that, like magic, we now have some coarse sandpaper here, and I'm just going to run this one edge, a corner really, across this. And all I'm doing here is taking off enough so that it will bridge that piece, but still sit flush on the corners. You don't have to take too much off, just enough for it to clear that gap. And then that will go in there, like that, and we'll be able to butt up against both walls and be flush. That's not going to be the location where it lives, but just for demonstration purposes. Alright, so I've done both ends of the building, like this, and like this. So now we'll continue towards the middle, assemble those pieces as well. Similar process here. This piece is a little warped. It's not cooperating as well as I might hope. Put a little bit of cement on there and hopefully get it to at least be tacky. So because of the bow in the wall, that didn't work out very well. So I've pulled out the big guns here and I'm using this 90-degree brace and trying to get that to line up so that I can glue that in, and I think once that I get it started, I should be okay. Yeah, that's part of the problem here, is we got this bump. So let's flatten that out a little bit. So for those of you who haven't seen one of these 90-degree braces before here, basically what it does is it's got padding on these surfaces here, and it because it's got a square metal piece on the back, it pushes the front up to, when you close these up, it pushes the front up there. You still have to be a little careful because I don't know how well you can see that, but there is still a tiny gap there. And that's what I'm trying to eliminate, so that it sits flush in there, so that when I put the glue on, it doesn't leave a gap. It takes a little bit of playing in order to get it right. The metal pieces do have some openings in the back, as you can see here, to allow you to get in there with the glue, in this case cement. And what I will do here is apply some pressure on the front so that as the cement dries, it will make sure that there's no gap. This section here, which unfortunately happens to be right where that piece of metal is, does not want to cooperate. Move that up. Get a bead of glue in there. And that will. So this piece is proving difficult. It's amazing how one bow in a wall can make your life miserable. Some more of my bracing, my Lego bracing here. Hopefully this will help solve the problem. And finally, I think I've got this under control. Hopefully the other side won't be quite so troublesome. So side 2 did cooperate a little more than side 1 did. I'm going to do the same thing here and put this in place on the foundation so that it sits correctly and sets correctly. So while we wait for those corners to set, let's talk about this piece here. This actually lays in the front here. I'll see if I can get this in without moving things around too much. And there's a lip on the foundation down at the bottom, and there are lips on these walls for these to sit on and make a connection. Looks something like that. So there's this lip that runs along here that allows the wall to sit in and stay flush, and give it some reinforcement to go on. What that means is there's some overlap on there. So it is an actual lip. I intend to use these Lego corner braces on there, but what that means is when I put this wall in here, that this leg will not lay flush on that wall because the lip keeps it from going straight. However, I measured out how big that lip is. It's about 30 thousandths. So what I can do is, once the wall is in there, like so, I can take this piece of this strip, cut it to size, lay that in there. That will allow that Lego piece to brace that corner way better than it would without it. I guess we're at the point now where I need to glue these to the foundation so that they don't move, and then we will play around with this last wall. So like we've done with the others, I'm just going to run a bead of cement along these areas here. For those who were paying attention, I did leave a gap between these bottom Lego pieces so that I can get in there and glue on that. Slide our last wall in here to the bottom first. Just put a couple of beads of glue on there on each side. I'm going to test fit the roof on here. And part of the reason I want to do this is so that I can see how much space I have here for bracing. So down at the bottom, I can't use a full-size Lego block because it doesn't fit underneath the door, so I'm going to use the thinner ones. But up here on the top, I should be able to have enough. I'm going to go this way so that I've got a little bit, but if I put that so that it's just about flush with the top of the window frame on both sides, I should be able to clear everything. So I can set it right on top of that door frame. Get a nice flush surface. Use the bigger brush. Give that a good drink. So hopefully you can see there's a gap in there where this piece will slide in. We will cement that in there as well. Put some pressure on it. That will provide the appropriate amount of bracing and not go anywhere. We're going to repeat that step for the other top piece and then for the smaller pieces for the bottom. I wanted to show you how I'm going about doing this. I glued the thin piece to the bottom, to the foundation, including putting some cement on the top nubs there so that it would attach to the foundation as well. Using the tweezers to get it in there, and then we'll glue that as well. Plus it'll give it some extra surface area on the bottom that this is glued to help prevent the structure from lifting off and as it gets handled and so on. We'll repeat that for the second side. So that gives us a pretty solid structure with the roof set in place just temporarily. I'm thinking that's looking pretty good. So that gets us about halfway in this build. In the next episode, we'll finish the construction of this structure, and we'll cover touching up the foundation, assembling the decks and stairways, weathering, and that ever-important final assembly. So that's all for this episode. This structure may not seem like much, but it does go to show that even an out-of-the-box project can throw you some curveballs every once in a while. What do you think about this structure kit? Have you ever built it yourself? Any tips for me that would have made the process easier? Let me know in the comments below. Also, make sure that you subscribe and click on the bell so that you won't miss out on any content. And finally, use those comments to include any other questions or suggestions. Check out these playlists on your left to get more information on building the Grunge layout as well as other great videos. I'm Joe Parker of the Pixel Depot. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll meet me next time in the train room.